In this episode, we talk about the new subcompact SUV from Toyota, the CHR. We discuss our adventures with the new Alfa Romeo Giulia, and we answer viewer questions. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Talking Cars with Consumer Reports. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Gabe Shanhar.
And I'm Mike Monticello.
And we've got a pretty good episode today because a lot of viewer questions, but two very interesting cars. One of them not yet on sale, but we have a press vehicle, the Toyota CHR behind us. We're also going to talk about the fact that we've taken possession of our own Alfa Romeo Giulia, their new sports sedan. So we're going to kick it off with the CHR, which is a very unique looking vehicle. It has, it's competing in the subcompact SUV category, and it's a little late to the game, right, Gabe?
You bet. And this is really odd because Toyota is typically in the forefront of every segment. I mean, it kind of invents segments and subsegments, and that's what happened with the Toyota RAV4.
Right, it's
with
big brother, yeah.
With the Lexus RX. But here, what took so long to get a real competitor in the subcompact SUV?
Right.
And now that they're late in the party, you'd expect, okay, bring something to the table. And so, I mean, the styling is a matter of taste. I mean, it's very unusual.
Yeah.
And it comes in only as front-wheel drive. All-wheel drive will come later. Mm-hmm. So, and the pricing is seems a little high before you take into account the fact that it has all the active safety things that Toyota gives you as standard.
Well, it does. It comes in two trims. So you have an XLE that's about $23,500 with destination, and then you get the XLE Premium, $25,310. And Mike, it does, like Gabe said, it comes with the safety features and such. But can you give us a little background? Why does it look so unique? And then also, why is it not necessarily like a first Toyota product, Toyota only product?
Yeah, so this was originally intended as a Scion product.
And that's the brand that they knocked off, the low-cost brand that they
Right,
they
and
folded.
now it's back into Toyota, and so that's why it only has two trims, because that's what they were going to do with Scion.
Right.
And that's why it's also only front-wheel drive, because they weren't worried about all-wheel drive for the Scion brand.
Right.
So, and we asked Toyota when they came and dropped this vehicle off, what are you bringing to the table that's different than your competitors out there, like Subaru Crosstrek, Honda HR-V, Mazda CX-3, and they said the standard active safety system, like forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, which is great.
Right, it's across the board.
And they said really dynamic handling. And
after taking it out, what do you think?
We've only driven it a few days, but certainly we applaud them for the active safety system to be standard. That's fantastic.
At that price range, it is great. It's part of Toyota's plan.
Yeah, but the handling is only so-so. I'd say we say mildly sporty, moderately sporty for the class. It's not a Mazda CX-3, so we were a little surprised they hyped it that much to us, and then it wasn't super dynamic, But there's a lot of good things about it. Mm-hmm. The interior actually is pretty roomy.
Right, for the front seats.
Front seats are really nice. The back seat's actually roomy too. It's just very claustrophobic. It's hard to get in. Once you're in, there's good headroom and good knee space and stuff like that. But
you need to find the handle first.
Well, I was going to say it's once you get in and you have to reach up high. If you look back and you'll see on the cutaways, there's this weird handle up top that it's hidden, not hidden, but it's definitely for parents to get in. It's not going to let a kid get into that car.
Right. Well, kids will have a hard time.
And it's all because of the name CHR, Coupe High Rider. They wanted it to look like a coupe. And so that's what they did, to try to hide the rear door handles, although they're really not very hidden.
Yeah.
So that they were going for that kind of coupe-like look.
I found, getting in and out of it that, the front seats, like you said, front cabin roomy, for the category. You're not expecting to be an Lexus RX.
And nice materials too.
Good materials. Yeah. The rear seat, though, you close the door and it feels almost as if the roof line, window line starts here. Yeah. My head is almost in a helmet.
Just think if you were a kid.
Right.
The kids won't be able to see out at all.
Well, kid won't be able to see out. They're so low, and then they're on the.
Now they're just going to be punching each other the whole time
because
they have
feels
nothing
like
to look
a dark
at.
cave there in the back.
Yeah.
And not to mention the rear visibility for parking and merging is pretty awful.
And the backup camera, the rear view camera, is just this little on the rear view mirror instead of
sliver
on the display screen.
Right. Well, so when is this going on sale? It's
next month, April.
April. Yep. Okay. So we'll pick one up.
Yeah.
And test it, but
I
don't know. I'm a little put off by the styling and also the rear seat. But you know what? A lot of these vehicles are going to be two people. If they're little kids, they're going to be putting kids in them anyway, themselves in a bucket or something like that. So
if that.
the high handle.
This is usually a single-person kind of a car in an urban setting where the back seat doesn't matter much.
It's more for cargo space.
Styling is going to be a conversation piece, and I wouldn't be surprised if senior citizens are attracted to the car just like they were to the Scion XB before.
Right. You know, the one thing we forgot to touch on is, people might read about it and be like, well, in Europe they're getting a hybrid. In Europe they're getting all-wheel drive.
Right.
What's going on here? What did Toyota say about those types of options?
I think that these things are going to be coming.
Yeah.
Although what that might do to the price is
yeah,
significant.
It is already pretty pricey.
Right.
I mean, the XLE Premium gets heated seats, power driver, lumbar, and blind spot monitoring as well, warning. But yeah, $25,500.
Yeah, I mean, all-wheel drive is going to bump it up by $2,000, which is priced really close to the next size up. And
even the
RAV4.
It's getting into RAV4 territory, which is a much more solid and substantial size vehicle.
And all they would really tell us was that those two things, the all-wheel drive and the hybrid, are coming in the model cycle. But that's incredibly vague. I mean,
brand new,
is that,
so that's what, 5, 6
years? Is that
years?
3 years,
Yeah.
4 years, 5 years? It's hard to say. So we don't know when those are coming.
It seems like there's a big empty spot. It's been filled. We'll see how great it is with the fill. Other vehicle, totally different side of the spectrum. Again, we're talking Alfa Romeo Giulia. Now, we took possession of a TI trim. We also borrowed a Quadrifoglio, say that 6 times fast, earlier this year. You want to give us the specs on those two first off, Gabe? They're kind of different.
So let's start with a Quadrifoglio. This one is the high-performance version, which is designed to do battle with the AMG Mercedes and M cars from BMW and such. That's a $75,000, $80,000 car.
Yep.
I mean, it's been winning all sorts of Buff Book comparison tests. And we, on the other hand, bought the regular version, the 2-liter, 280 horsepower turbo, all-wheel drive, which what most people are going to buy. It's right around $50,000, and it's going to compete with, of course, BMW 3 Series, Mercedes C-Class, Audi A4, Lexus IS, Infiniti Q. So it's, I mean, it's a sexy car. I mean, it has a really storied brand name.
Right.
It's, but as compelling as it might look, I mean, after driving it a little bit, it's fun to drive, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's really, the handling is really fun. It's surprisingly comfortable riding.
Yep.
But in terms of interior quality or the infotainment system or just the overall solid feel of the car compared to those Germans I just mentioned, I don't know if I'm ready to send anyone
to endorse it at this point.
To buy this car. Not to mention, it's been back to the dealer about 3 times since we bought it.
So I was going to say, so the history of the car, the Quadrifoglio, it's a green 4-leaf clover, and it was a good luck charm on one of the early Alfa race cars. And I think that all the Alfas might need that 4-leaf clover because we have had a lot of problems. I haven't been able to get into the new one. I drove the press cars we had. I haven't had the opportunity to get into it just because it's been in the dealer so often. And one of the things was and I want to get your feelings on the driving, but I just want Gabe to tell us, what was one of the problems we had with some of the wiring?
So as a regular procedure, we put every car we buy on the lift and we inspect it underneath. So one of the brakes wear sensors was off, just hanging loose. Also, they couldn't figure out how to put the front license plate because it wasn't programmed for a US size license plate in the front. So it interfered with the park sensors.
Yep.
And the sunroof didn't want to open at some point. So
now let me interject.
Let me make one thing
You're
clear
the
here.
same one.
This is not that we base our reliability on a sample of one.
One car.
Right. I mean, we're going to have reliability from survey. This is going to be the official reliability.
Yep.
But nonetheless,
it's our
this
experience.
Is unusual.
Exactly. And that was the same point I was going to make. Mike, what were your thoughts on the driving experience?
Yeah.
You put some miles on it.
Yeah, I had it for a weekend, and honestly, I really enjoy driving it. It is one of those rare cars these days that you really look forward to driving because it's so sporty. A lot of cars have been dumbed down a little bit. They're more about the comfort. This thing is about the sport. It's about the handling. The steering is super quick.
For electric steering in particular,
has
right?
some feedback,
and
it loves to attack corners. And so if you have some good roads on the way home, I was like, this is going to be great. And it was something to look forward to, you know, like you seek out the curvy roads. And the engine has really good power. It likes to rev.
Both, I mean, the small 4
Yeah, our
as well,
280
turbo 4.
horsepower.
Right.
It has 280 horsepower.
Yeah, that's
really
pretty
decent.
high for that kind of displacement.
Yeah.
I mean, the steering is so quick. I mean, some people are going to think it's a little darty, but it's just over 2 turns between lock to lock. That's an Alfa trademark.
Yeah, and it's very planted in the corners. I mean, very stable, doesn't lean much, very planted. I mean, just really very secure. The transmission works really nicely, really quick shifts.
It's 8-speed automatic.
Yeah.
Both cars.
And so there's a lot of really good things about the driving experience, but I sort of think like they got the big picture right of the driving experience, but as Gabe was saying, they got some of these minor things wrong. Just
Like what?
odd things like the visor.
Yeah.
Usually you can use either hand. There's only a cutout on this side. So if you go up to pull the visor down, you can't grab it with your left hand.
Yeah.
You got to grab it with the other hand.
Yep.
And the temperature knobs has these nice big temperature knobs. But if you go and touch it and turn it, all it does is actually turn it on. So I spent about a half an hour of a drive once. I kept turning the knob, but I was looking at the road, right? So I would just reach over and turn it. And it took me a half an hour to realize, why is this car not getting any warmer? Because I turned it like 7 times, individually 7 times out. It's not warm enough, not warm enough.
Right.
And I looked over, it was the same temperature I'd started at because you have to go turn and then turn again.
Yeah.
And that's just weird.
Yeah, the first touch just shows you the temperature on the screen.
That's just a strange thing. The seats need a little more bolstering. They actually need some bolstering on the bottom cushion, and the seat doesn't. You can't move the front of the seat up and down.
You can't pan up the front.
Yeah, and if you don't have any bolstering, you at least need that. And then the seat.
See, I found it was all right because when we had the press cars here, I like it low.
Okay.
So I didn't see that same thing, but I totally understand what you're saying.
But it was just those kinds of things.
The seat heater logic. Yeah, go on there.
Well, what I was going to say is the seat heaters just don't get that hot, and they don't get hot very quickly.
You have to press it 3 times for the maximum setting instead of on every other car. The first touch is full on, you know, because you want it like hot and quick.
Those are
odd things. I could
call them quirks,
yes,
though.
And I could live with those.
It's
I could live with those because I enjoy driving the car so much. You know, we buy a lot of normal cars for normal people, and this is one of those cars that every time it's free for the weekend, I think I'm going to take it. You know, but then
at the dealership.
That said, when I got into the car on Monday morning to drive it in, check engine light came on.
Right.
So
it's unfortunate because, like you said, not balancing, not biasing, not having any impact on our reliability survey. But consumers out there are going to sit there and go, "Oh, this is why Alfa left the country. This is why you can't buy these products."
So deja vu there.
They still haven't figured it out. It's been 20 years almost since they've been here. So I'm looking forward to getting in the car. Definitely looking forward to seeing how that compares against another car in our stable. We'll talk about another date, BMW 530i. So some interesting stuff.
Yeah, interesting. Lots of new hardware coming in.
New hardware. So we do have another pretty good part. This is going to be an episode where we have a number of questions from viewers that we pulled off of the YouTube comments. First one is going to be about the Honda CR-V and the new radio. Because we talked about the tune knob, lack of tune knob, we talked about the volume knob. We even have people saying, like Goldbug 657, so now you got the volume knob, you complain about tuning, it's a hassle for tapping a button. Another guy, Ryush Yuratori, says, seriously, it's a non-issue. Steve Ward says, John Lynn, could you just explain why it's an issue for you and not for most people? We're not driving a different car every day or two. So I'm going to say, that's true. We drive different cars every day. But you know what? We sometimes stay in cars for a week at a time.
Yeah,
and we drive cars all across the spectrum. And none of the ones, I don't care if it's a Honda CR-V, I don't care if it's the Prius Prime that we have, whatever, the tapping is distracting, it's not accurate, and it's just not a simple way of doing something. It's a reinvention of the wheel for no reason, and that's the thing.
Yeah, that screen is totally convoluted. It doesn't respond quickly always. And also, I mean, to the guy's point, let's say you do have 5 presets or 6 presets, and what if you travel beyond your area?
Exactly.
You need to like tune into some other, or if you have someone else in the car and they don't like your presets and you know, they want to turn.
It's not unlimited presets.
And satellite radio is a good example of so you have a lot of presets, but satellite radio has so many stations.
Yeah.
It's just easier sometimes to just flip it back and forth. And if you're going to have a tuning function, maybe eventually they're going to take the tuning away and you're going to have presets. But at this point, there's still a tuning function. It's a button. it's just easier to use a knob.
It is, and especially since you have the volume control on the steering wheel where your hands should be
Right.
at all times. It's right there at your thumb.
But I will say,
and voice commands don't work either, because I've done it, and you have people in the car. It's radio, tune to whatever, XM radio or FM station. It's just, it interrupts everyone. Everyone in the car has to be quiet. It's just, again, reinvention of the wheel for no reason.
I think it would be nice to have it. That said, I think that the volume knob is more important than the tuning knob, I think, for me.
Okay.
I have really come to appreciate those cars that have all the stations that are receivable.
Yep.
And then you just scroll between them. You don't need presets. You don't need tuning.
Like with a
like
with a central
BMWs and
controller.
Audis.
Right, they'll
where
automatically
all
update.
That's the easiest way to do it.
It's
The big
easiest way
controller
of
knob,
doing it.
just scroll
Exactly.
up and down.
Yeah.
We do have one guy who says, Life Traveler 1, he says it is a hassle. He purchased a 2016 Civic EX, Honda Civic EX, and he sold it within 2 months. One of his major complaints was dealing with the horrible entertainment unit. So it's out there. It is something we see because we drive all the different cars. Yes, we're in and out of cars, but you know what? Is a universal complaint, not just Honda CR-V. So we have another question about the Ford Flex. And the writer writes, I need to get a minivan for space for work. I was thinking of the Odyssey since I've driven and loved it. But my question is, what is your take on the Ford Flex?
Well, first of all, driven and loved it. That's already an indication right there. Go with the Odyssey. The Flex is, it's got a lot of space, but it's long in the tooth. It's an old car. It's
has a roomy third seat for that type of vehicle.
It does, but compared to an Odyssey, I don't think it brings anything. It has zero advantage over an Odyssey, which has more space, drives better,
Easier to get in and out.
has a much more refined powertrain, and I'd go with the Odyssey. Even and now that it's the outgoing Odyssey, because there is a redesign imminent. They're probably going to deal on the Odyssey, and after building the current Odyssey for 5-6 years, they probably learn how to build it.
Right, so a lot of our reliability data has shown you buy the end of the model run and you're going to get a solid, reliable one. Now, Mike, I know you have a totally different take on
Well,
the
it's not
question.
totally different. I agree that if you're, in terms of, space efficiency, ease of use, you're not going to beat a minivan. But I would say that if you're trying to escape that minivan stigma, the Ford Flex is a great way to go. It is still a recommended vehicle, one of the few Fords that we recommend. And you can get an EcoBoost V6, which has a lot of power. Again, fuel economy is not great on the Flex. But the other thing is, they sell very few of them. You're not going to see yourself coming the other way if that matters to you. And also, they probably aren't going to build it for that much longer. So if you're thinking about a Flex, I'd say get one now before they don't even make them anymore.
Very similar to the end run of the
And
Odyssey.
it is a really good vehicle. So I think you can't go wrong with it. Maybe the Odyssey would work better for more things, but
Yeah, if you have to put the kids in the car, one thing, so this is for work though, so thinking of folding down the seats, the Odyssey is going to have the much bigger, more square, almost a tall rectangle cargo area.
sliding side doors.
Sliding side doors, exactly. So both good choices. Probably depends on price, availability.
Right.
Odyssey's probably a little bit better.
Probably.
We have one question about top picks. What about minivan? Honda Odyssey, Toyota Sienna, Chrysler Pacifica. Some of them aren't qualified because Odyssey's being redesigned, so we're not going to have a top pick on that. It's not potential. The Pacifica is not recommended at this stage. That leaves the Sienna, and it's the only recommended minivan. We're not going to have a category of one and then just by default give it that award.
Right, and we're also retesting the Sienna with its 8-speed automatic. So we felt like the whole category of minivans was maybe a little bit in limbo, and we wanted to highlight the Ridgeline, which is really a smart vehicle, and so we substituted the minivan category with that.
And top picks is always a little bit in flux in the sense
exactly.
of how things are selling, how people are buying. Maybe we've dropped and had a single luxury category versus having multiple luxuries. So it's not a hard and fast. And like Gabe said, the category just doesn't have a lot of players in it right now that are qualified.
Right.
One final question about autonomous driving. Someone says, all this is unnecessary. If the visibility of new cars was better, we wouldn't need all these names and nannies and systems. If the data exists, it'll be abused. If you want to pay attention while driving, just get off the roads.
Well, you know what? Here, I would say there's some truth to that to some extent, which is that at a former job, we used to buy used long-term cars, sometimes some pretty old long-term cars, and we bought a 1996 Lexus ES300. And when I got in that thing, the rear window is gigantic. I mean, it is so airy. It was so easy to see out of this car. It was night and day compared to all the cars that we drive now.
Right.
Admittedly, today's crash structures are so much better, but in the older cars that had, really awesome visibility, you've got a much better chance of not getting in an accident because you can see all around yourself much better.
Particularly reversing and such like that.
I think it's interesting the way we've had to go for the crash structure, but man, those older cars were so easy to see out of.
Right. I mean, now you have something like this, the coupe high rider, and with the narrow windows and so on, you're relying on systems to compensate for styling.
Right.
Which I think is what you're
right.
saying on that.
But you do still need to pay attention. I find myself sometimes just relying on the rear view camera when I really should be looking around a couple times to make sure that I'm seeing everything.
Right. When you don't have a rear view camera, you then notice about really how blind you can be by some of the C-pillars, the third pillar in the back, or the head restraints, how they really block the view.
It is easy to trust the systems when you really still need to fully pay attention to everything you're doing yourself.
Here's my answer to this person. There are two types of people in the world. Those that look at the world the way they'd like it to be, or those who look at the world the way it is. And the way the world is that distraction is here to stay. And distraction leads to human error. And human error is a major cause of most crashes. So as engineers, we develop solutions to serve the society we live in. And so autonomous driving, or all the advanced safety features that create the ingredients for autonomous driving, lane departure warning, lane keep assist, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, blind spot detection. These are all good things that have a whole lot of potential of preventing crashes.
And to make sure we separate autonomous driving, none of these systems are going to take the car over for you.
Right.
It's even in a car that has systems like that, it's more engaging. The systems are there. They're not preventing you from doing it. They're protecting you really from someone else. Automatic braking isn't going to cause a rear accident any more than someone tailgating you and you slamming on the brakes. The person shouldn't be so close to you. It's going to prevent you from hitting someone else who jams on the brakes. So it's a lot of systems that are protecting you. They're not out there preventing you from doing something, in your normal driving.
Right. We're not saying rely on these things, ignore good driving.
Right.
But if you get a tug here and there because you crossed a lane marking, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
Or a sudden, warning on the dashboard that's saying you're getting a little too close to somebody.
Right.
The systems that do it right and do it well without being too much of a nanny state. Some of them do it way too early. But the ones that do it right, it's like, oh, okay, yep, I guess I was looking over there for a second when I, should have been looking over there.
And probably one of the final takeaways is, they're all under, a constant change. They're evolving. We're seeing different systems.
Maybe you're futzing with that Honda infotainment.
Exactly.
Oh, right,
I was trying to tune the radio.
But they are getting better.
Yeah.
And
Getting
we're seeing them improve all the time. So that'll do it for this episode of Talking Cars with Consumer Reports. To learn more about the cars that we talked about, check out the links in the show notes below. And as always, see you next time.